If you ever move away from the city to start over in the countryside, don't assume quiet means safe. Don't assume empty roads mean nobody is watching. And if the locals tell you to stay away from a certain house, listen to them. Because sometimes the most dangerous places aren't abandoned, they just want you to think they are. 26-year-old Ethan Carter thought leaving the city would solve his problems. He was tired of noise, tired of traffic, tired of living surrounded by strangers. What he wanted was peace, a fresh start. Instead, he found Miller Road, and years later, whenever he sees a light shining from an empty window, he remembers the last house at the end of the road. This is Tales of the Dark, and this is the story of the last house on Miller Road. Ethan Carter worked remotely as a graphic designer in Portland. After the death of a distant uncle, he unexpectedly inherited an old farmhouse located several hours away in a rural farming community. The property wasn't worth much. The house was old. The land was mostly unused, but it was fully paid off. At 26 years old, the opportunity felt impossible to ignore. A month later, Ethan packed his belongings and moved. The farmhouse sat at the end of Miller Road. The nearest town was 15 minutes away. The nearest neighbor was nearly 3 miles from his property. At first, everything seemed perfect. The air felt cleaner, the nights felt peaceful, and for the first time in years, Ethan could hear silence. Real silence, not traffic, not sirens, nothing, just the wind moving through endless fields. The first week passed without incident. He spent his days working online and his evenings fixing parts of the old farmhouse. Life felt simple until he noticed the house across the cornfield. The building sat nearly half a mile away, large, old, completely isolated. At first, Ethan barely paid attention to it. Then one night he noticed a light, a single yellow light glowing from an upstairs window. He checked the time, 2:17 a.m. The sight surprised him. He had assumed the house was abandoned, the property looked neglected, the paint was peeling. The porch sagged noticeably. Several windows appeared broken, yet someone was clearly inside. The next morning, Ethan drove into town for groceries. While checking out, he casually mentioned the house. The cashier immediately stopped smiling. Which house? The one across the cornfield. A strange silence followed. Then the woman looked away. You shouldn't worry about that place. Ethan laughed. Why? The cashier simply shook her head. I'd focus on your own property. The conversation ended there. The response felt odd, but Ethan assumed she was just being unfriendly. Over the next several days, the same thing happened repeatedly. Every local reacted strangely whenever he mentioned the house. Nobody answered questions directly. Nobody explained who lived there, most simply changed the subject. One older farmer finally gave him a warning. Don't go there after dark. Ethan smiled. Why not? The farmer stared toward the window, then quietly replied, people around here know better. That night, Ethan stayed awake intentionally. At exactly 2:17 a.m., the light appeared again. The same upstairs window, the same yellow glow. He watched for nearly 20 minutes. Nothing happened. Then movement appeared behind the glass. A person standing motionless. Watching, Ethan couldn't make out details from that distance, only a silhouette perfectly still, looking directly toward his farmhouse. A chill crawled up his spine. The figure remained there for nearly an hour, then disappeared. The light shut off. The window went dark. The following morning, Ethan convinced himself he was overreacting. It was probably just another resident, nothing more. Yet the next night it happened again, 2:17 a.m., light, figure, watching. Every night after that, the same pattern continued. Always 2:17, never earlier, never later. The routine became impossible to ignore. Then things started getting worse. One morning, Ethan discovered footprints outside his house. Fresh footprints. The ground had been muddy from rain. The prints circled the property, slowly, methodically. Whoever made them had walked around the entire farmhouse several times. The tracks eventually disappeared near the cornfield, leading toward the abandoned house. Ethan reported it to local police. A deputy arrived later that afternoon. After hearing the story, the deputy looked uncomfortable. "Did you actually see somebody?" "No," the deputy nodded. "Then it's probably nothing." The response irritated Ethan. The footprints clearly belonged to someone, yet nobody seemed interested. That evening, he installed security cameras around the property. The system covered every entrance, every window, every side of the farmhouse. If someone returned, he would know. The first 2 nights produced nothing. Then on the 3rd night, Ethan woke suddenly. A loud knock echoed through the house. 3 sharp knocks. Knock, knock, knock. He sat upright in bed. His heart raced. The house fell silent. For several moments, nothing happened. Then came 3 more knocks. This time from a different side of the house. Ethan grabbed a flashlight, slowly approached a window, looked outside. Nothing. The yard appeared empty. The field stretched into darkness. No movement, no people, no vehicles, just darkness. The knocking stopped. The following morning, Ethan reviewed his security footage. Every camera had failed. At exactly 2:17 a.m., all recordings ended simultaneously, then resumed 27 minutes later. The missing footage couldn't be recovered. That was the moment Ethan stopped believing the incidents were random. Someone was deliberately targeting him, someone who knew exactly where he lived, and exactly how to avoid being seen. Over the next week, strange things continued. Tools disappeared, doors were left unlocked, objects moved inside the house, nothing major, just enough to make Ethan question himself. Then came the discovery that changed everything. One rainy evening, while repairing part of the attic floor, Ethan accidentally uncovered a hidden compartment beneath several wooden boards. Inside sat dozens of old folders, hundreds of newspaper clippings, missing person posters, photographs, police reports. Ethan carried everything downstairs. As he examined the documents, his blood ran cold. Every missing person had vanished within a few miles of Miller Road. The dates stretched back decades. Some victims were tourists, others were local residents, several had never been found. Then Ethan noticed something even stranger. Many of the photographs contained the same house, the abandoned house across the cornfield. Its appearance changed over the years, but it was unmistakably the same property. The same upstairs window, the same location, the same house. At the bottom of the box sat a notebook. Its pages were filled with handwritten names, dozens of names, every missing person listed inside. And written on the final page was Ethan's name, his full name, written in fresh black ink, as if someone had added it recently, very recently. Then Ethan heard a noise outside, slow footsteps crossing the porch. He froze. The footsteps stopped directly outside the front door. A moment later, 3 sharp knocks echoed through the house. Knock, 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 and when Ethan looked through the window, he saw a man standing in the darkness, staring directly at him. Ethan's body locked in place. The man stood only a few feet beyond the front door, motionless, watching. The porch light illuminated just enough of his face to reveal pale skin and dark, sunken eyes. He wasn't smiling, he wasn't angry. His expression was completely blank. That somehow made it worse. For several seconds, neither of them moved. Then came another knock. Knock, 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 slow, deliberate, as if the man already knew Ethan was standing on the other side of the door. Ethan grabbed his phone. His hands trembled as he dialed 911. The dispatcher answered immediately. While Ethan explained what was happening, he never took his eyes off the stranger. The man remained perfectly still, listening, waiting. The dispatcher assured him deputies were on the way. Then the stranger slowly turned around. Without saying a word, he stepped off the porch, walked into the darkness, and disappeared. By the time deputies arrived 20 minutes later, there was no sign of him. No footprints, no vehicle tracks, nothing. The officers searched the property briefly before leaving. Their lack of concern frustrated Ethan. Nobody seemed to understand how serious this felt, or maybe they did. Maybe that was the problem. The following morning, Ethan decided he was done waiting for answers. He wanted to know what was inside the abandoned house, the one every local avoided, the one connected to decades of disappearances, the one with the upstairs light. Armed with a flashlight and a camera, he crossed the cornfield shortly after sunrise. The closer he got, the worse the house looked. Broken windows, rotting wood, collapsed sections of roof. It appeared completely abandoned, yet something felt wrong. The grass around the property had been disturbed recently. Someone had been here, a lot. The front door hung partially open. Ethan stepped inside. Dust covered most surfaces. The air smelled damp. At first the interior looked empty, then he noticed something strange. The kitchen contained fresh food, not much, just canned goods, bottled water, recently purchased supplies. Someone was definitely living there. His pulse quickened. Room by room, Ethan searched the house. Most areas appeared unused, until he reached the second floor, the same floor where the light appeared every night. At the end of a narrow hallway sat a locked door. Unlike everything else in the house, the lock looked new, very new. Ethan forced it open. The moment he entered, his blood turned cold. Photographs covered every wall, hundreds of them, maybe thousands. Every photograph showed the same thing. Him, Ethan, sleeping, working, mowing the lawn, walking through town. Shopping for groceries, looking out his window. Some images had clearly been taken from inside his property, others from outside. A few were taken through his bedroom window at night. His stomach twisted. Whoever had been watching him wasn't a random stalker. This had been going on since the day he arrived. Then he noticed the dates. Some photographs were older than his moving date, several weeks older. That wasn't possible. The pictures showed him performing activities that happened after he inherited the farmhouse. Yet the timestamps were from before he arrived. Ethan stared at them in disbelief. Then he heard footsteps downstairs. Someone had entered the house. The sound echoed through the floorboards, slow, measured, approaching. Ethan immediately killed his flashlight. The footsteps continued, one floor below, then on the staircase, coming up. His heart hammered against his ribs. He quietly backed into a corner. The hallway outside creaked. Someone was there, moving toward the room. Closer, closer, then silence. For several seconds, everything stopped. Ethan barely breathed. Then he heard a voice, a calm male voice, right outside the door. "You weren't supposed to come here." Every muscle in Ethan's body tightened. The voice sounded familiar, terrifyingly familiar, because it sounded exactly like the man he had seen on his porch. Then came another sentence. "You should have left when you had the chance." The floor creaked again. The person was entering the room. Ethan bolted. He sprinted past the doorway, caught only a brief glimpse of the man. Middle-aged, thin, expressionless, holding a camera. The stranger didn't chase immediately. That somehow felt worse. Ethan raced down the stairs and out the front door, across the cornfield, back toward his farmhouse. When he finally reached his house, he locked every door and window. Then he called police again. This time officers took the situation seriously. Several deputies searched the abandoned house that evening. What they found shocked everyone. Nothing, no food, no photographs, no camera equipment. No evidence anyone had been there. The entire second floor was empty, exactly as if Ethan had imagined everything. But he knew what he saw. The following week became a nightmare. Every night at 2:17 a.m. the upstairs light returned. Every night the silhouette appeared, watching, waiting. And every morning new footprints circled his house. Then came the final incident, the one that ended everything. 3 weeks later, Ethan woke just after midnight. Something felt wrong. The house was silent, too silent. He checked the security cameras. Every feed was working, except one. The camera facing his bedroom window, static, only static. A sudden feeling of dread washed over him. Slowly, Ethan turned toward the window beside his bed. A figure stood outside, only inches from the glass, watching him sleep. The same man, the same blank expression, the same dead eyes. Ethan jumped backward and grabbed his phone. By the time he looked again, the man was gone. That was enough. The next morning, Ethan packed everything he owned. Within 48 hours, he had sold the property and left Miller Road forever. Authorities eventually investigated the disappearances connected to the area. Nothing substantial was ever discovered. No arrests, no suspects, no answers. The abandoned house still stands today. The upstairs light still appears according to some locals, and nobody willingly visits after dark. For years, Ethan tried convincing himself it was over, that he had escaped. Then one rainy evening, nearly 2 years later, he returned home from work and found a plain envelope resting against his apartment door. No return address, no stamp, nothing. Inside was a single photograph, a recent photograph, taken through his apartment window. The image showed Ethan sitting on his couch, watching television, completely unaware he was being photographed. Written across the back in black ink were 6 words: "You should have stayed on Miller Road." Ethan moved again shortly afterward, but deep down he knows something terrifying. Whoever was watching him in the countryside never stopped watching. And somewhere far beyond the city lights, the upstairs window of the last house on Miller Road still glows at exactly 2:17 a.m., waiting for someone new to move in. If you are brave enough to hear more nightmares, subscribe to Tales of the Dark. And if you have your own terrifying experience, leave it in the comments or send your story by email. Maybe your nightmare will become the next story told here.